If someone came to me and gave me a truckload of money to make videos for this channel, and all of a sudden my videos were all about how Hollywood is in such a great place, how we need more stories pushing certain ideologies, and how great of a president Kamala Harris would have been, by the way, I'd be called a sellout. But when the South Park creators ink a $1.5 billion deal and then put out a whole season solely dedicated to bashing Trump, we're supposed to believe that this is just simply part of their normal, standard, socio-political critiques that leave no one unscathed.
That's fucking stupid!
That one-sided approach they've taken in this 27th season is a real departure from what South Park once was. South Park's entire identity was built off of no one being safe from their mockery, where in time, both sides of an argument got their 30 minutes in the crosshairs. No person, no topic, and no opinion was off limits. And if you could wade through all the poop jokes, South Park once upon a time had a real knack for reducing heated, complicated issues down to a core principle that could be lampooned. Distilling the divisive, sensitive topics of the day down to a simple idea and approaching the whole thing through humor, truly embodying the role of the court jester. But those days appear to be well and truly gone. South Park has shirked its former role as a vessel for even-handed social and political criticism and decided to take up arms against one side and one side only. And I can't underscore enough how much of a 180 that is for this show. Just imagine your reaction 10 years ago if I told you then that in 2025, South Park's jokes and takes would be indistinguishable from those of late-night hosts and CNN commentary. That Matt Stone and Trey Parker got a check for $1.5 billion and suddenly started parodying the same old sorry, played-out talking points everyone else was saying. That South Park, of all things, got sucked up into the mainstream media industrial complex. If I told you that in 2015, you're not dumb. You might have thought it was possible, but I still think you'd be fairly surprised if that happened. After all, just a year after that hypothetical conversation in 2015, the writing was on the wall. Famous for getting their episodes out in 3 days to keep them as relevant as possible, South Park was caught completely flat-footed by Trump's first election. The episode they delivered the day after Trump's victory was an awkward, halting affair that was more bizarre than funny or entertaining or poignant. It was clear that they had no plan in place for Trump winning in 2016, and ever since then they've failed to broach the subject of Trump's presidency with any kind of effectiveness. Fast forward 9 years, and South Park is still failing to discuss Trump and the social issues of the day with any of the nuance, cleverness, or wit that made the show so popular. They've just become a vessel for the messaging of one side, eschewing their approach to social criticism and reducing themselves to a bizarre obsession with Trump's dick, and calling him Satan. South Park has become myopic and zealous, turning into the very thing they used to criticize. And if their take on America's current political climate wasn't tepid enough, put that against the backdrop of them being utterly silent in their criticism of the sitting president during 4 years of Joe Biden. I don't care about your political beliefs one way or another, but if you, as a purveyor of comedy, can't find anything critical or more importantly funny to say about Joe Biden of all people, you should hang up your clown shoes. Not a peep about the president that at times could hardly speak, whose son was a literal crackhead. Nothing about cocaine being found in the White House. Nothing. That's just comedic malpractice. In fact, as far as I can tell, their mentions of Joe Biden are limited to one singular defaced photograph of the then president that showed up on the White family's conspiracy corkboard. Apparently the creators didn't want to mock Joe Biden due to political burnout.
Oh, jeez.
But they sure don't seem to be burned out anymore. Now let me take a minute to be crystal clear. I don't care about your political beliefs or which way you lean. I'll talk about social issues that are all too often being ham-fistedly crammed into today's shows and movies, but I don't want to wade into politics on this channel. You're not here for my political beliefs. In fact, Hollywood's overt move toward cramming their views on contemporary political issues with a slant into their products over the last 15 years is a large reason channels like mine exist. When you reduce your show or movie to tackling the political issue of today, the art of storytelling always suffers as a result. It makes your work age like milk, and people are tired of being lectured one way or the other when you just want to watch something and get away from all that. Now, obviously South Park is a different beast from your typical TV show. It's one that lives off of those relevant, current-day issues. So you can't hold it to the same standard as other works in wanting them to keep politics out of it, and I don't expect them to. I fully believe they should keep doing what's worked for them in the past, but that's just it. This is not the South Park from the past. You can't get back from banking a 10-figure deal and then fall completely in line with the media complex's narrative and not be called a sellout. Not when you've made a name for yourself for doing the exact opposite for decades. And I know I'm just yelling into the void on this, and this disclaimer won't dissuade people for whom nuance washes over them like water over a duck's back from storming into the comments to attack some political bias they've imagined. But they can be my guest. Nothing will change their minds, and they're just helping with the algorithm. South Park, of all things, ironically, was once known for not being afraid to talk about touchy socio-political topics, so some angry comments and death threats aren't going to keep me from talking about how different this show has become. Those types of comments and threats haven't stopped me thus far, so why stop now? I'm not here to defend Trump or Trump's people or Trump's agenda. If I was, you'd have seen this video a lot sooner, you'd see me criticizing this show on a weekly basis, and you'd see me going through each episode, issue by issue, talking about how wrong the South Park creators are about everything, and how the show's always been terrible and classless. And if my intentions with this video were truly political, as some surely will think they are no matter what I say, after what happened last week, you'd find some real vitriol in my criticism for South Park. But you won't find any of that here. On the contrary, I think some of the criticisms South Park has levied this season are warranted. I still think some of what South Park's done this season is funny. Kristi Noem shooting puppies is the treatment she deserves after she unwisely shared that little nugget of her history. I thought Charlie Kirk's representation was funny, as did Kirk himself, but of course there's a gloomier air hanging over that portrayal now. And casting JD Vance as Tattoo from Fantasy Island is hilarious. Even Trump having a small penis might have been funny if they knew when to move on from it, rather than it being the centerpiece of their first 4 episodes. South Park even dove into some good topics thus far, like society's growing over-reliance on ChatGPT, or the Labubu craze being a form of satanic ritual. But even when they had something good to work with, they white-knuckled the wheel and veered right into, well, more accurately left into, immigration and tariffs. And once they've spent the first half of an episode on something like ChatGPT or ICE raids, they've always managed to spend the second half on Trump's penis, to an oddly obsessive extent. I think this new season still has some humor in their approach to subjects, but when your feet are firmly planted on one side of the fence and you're slinging all your barbs and arrows toward the other, you've ceased to be on a mission to levy social criticism or entertain. You've just become an activist, and the show suffers for it. It would be one thing to touch on all of these things in an episode or two, but to make your entire season like this, you've either lost the plot or you've sold the plot to some other master. If you haven't watched this season of South Park, I can't blame you, but you might not be fully aware of the depths they're going to attack Trump's side and Trump's side only. So far, halfway through the season, they've said that Trump has a small penis, they said that Trump is Satan, they said that he's in a gay relationship with the actual Satan, they've cast him in the same light as Jeffrey Epstein, they've called him an authoritarian, and just about everything else you've heard about Trump for the last 9 years. And I didn't think Matt Stone and Trey Parker were very environmentally conscious, but I may have to rethink that after how much they've been recycling and reusing their own jokes this season. Trump having a small penis is hardly an original thought to begin with, but it's a common South Park trope they've used in the past against people like Osama bin Laden. And they've literally just put Trump in the same role as Saddam Hussein used to be cast in, being in bed with Satan. So, Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein. They've really put Trump in some good company. Hell, even this joke about Cartman failing to off himself with a non-gas-powered car was a repeat of their own material. Congratulations, Paramount. You paid $1.5 billion for South Park's recycling bin. As if the topics they're harping on this season weren't tired enough already, and as if their messaging wasn't hitting on all the worn-out talking points you hear everywhere else, recycling old material like this makes this season feel even lazier, and even more like they're just here to proselytize. Of course, we're still waiting for South Park to say anything about some of the issues they look to be taking an aim at in the Season 27 teaser trailer. We're yet to see anything on air traffic control problems, the French taking back the Statue of Liberty, or intergalactic Diddy parties, as all of those far more entertaining and far less partisan subjects have taken a back seat while South Park has zoomed in on Trump's penis for 4 episodes. The creators even gave in and allowed certain episodes where they depicted Muhammad to be banned as part of their recent deal, which could not be more antithetical to their former approach with this show. It's hard to see all this in any other light. South Park cashed in and sold out. They've abandoned the very things that made them popular, successful, and entertaining, and they've embraced the status quo of the media industrial complex, casting aside their unique position in the industry and becoming indistinguishable from all the other voices. And the sad thing is the South Park creators think this makes them rebels, pushing back against authority and speaking truth to power, when in reality it just brings this former outlier of a show in line with the massive, monolithic entertainment ecosystem that's been saying the same things for nearly a decade. It's a pretty hard left turn when you take in the rest of South Park's body of work, and it's sad to see another franchise get sucked up into the machine. After essentially being off the air for 5 years, only chiming in with specials and half seasons with lukewarm takes on some of the most controversial and divisive issues we've faced in a generation, South Park came back with a mission. South Park now feels angry, preachy, myopic, and agenda-driven. It feels like they've left behind the show's entire identity, sacrificing it at the altar of extreme wealth. For now, we're just left to speculate on why this week's highly anticipated episode was delayed, and whether or not the show will keep up their current pace of singularly focused Trump bashing through the season's end. But from what I've seen, I think it would be hard for them to leave their agenda behind. Now, I'll give credit to whoever got to South Park. Co-opting this show is a stroke of genius. Just like with The Boys, which became very contemporaneously political as the show went on, the natural inclination of the average South Park viewer is not toward the left. The left has famously struggled to reach young men in recent years, young men like those who make up most of South Park's viewership. So digging their claws into a show like this is a smart move for them. But, for us, it sucks to see anything in Hollywood co-opted for political purposes. Have you been watching this season of South Park? What have you thought about the crusade they're on this season? Let me know in the comments below. And remember to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to HateWatchers for reviews of other current shows and movies. Thank you for stirring up a hornet's nest once again with me today, and I'll catch you on the next one.